So when it comes to serving people who have disabilities in the church, the most important thing we can do is take some time to really understand where they're coming from. And today we're going to take a deeper look at Down syndrome and learn from parents what is it that they really want us to know. So I hear you have a new student coming to your class who has Down syndrome. That's great! So do you know all about Down syndrome? You do? Do you? Down syndrome is the most common chromosomal disorder diagnosed in the U.S. It is also a syndrome that many people feel familiar with, which is great news. But do you think there may be more to Down syndrome that most people know? Well, we asked parents of children who have Down syndrome what they thought. Turns out, there's a lot to learn. Down syndrome, what parents want you to know. The first thing that parents would love you to know is the basics. Down syndrome is a chromosomal condition that occurs when an extra copy of chromosome 21 is present. There are 3 types of Down syndrome, with trisomy 21 being the most common at about 95% of cases. Down syndrome is not caused by something a mother did while she was pregnant. This error in cell division occurs at random. People with Down syndrome often share some common traits. They may have low muscle tone, short stature, an upward slant to eyes, a single deep crease across the palm, and many have mild to moderate intellectual disabilities. But there's one thing that people who have Down syndrome share that parents want you to always remember. Each one of them is unique. Every person who has Down syndrome has their own unique personality, gifts, skills, sense of humor, quirks, things that make them happy and things that make them mad, things that they love and things that they don't, just like everyone else. So remember this, if you have met one person with Down syndrome, then you have met one person with Down syndrome. The second thing that parents would love you to know is what you say matters. Something that is important to understand about children who have Down syndrome is that their receptive language often comes before expressive language. This means that a person, even if they are nonverbal or minimally verbal, often can understand what's being said to them or in front of them, even if they don't have the skills to communicate back verbally yet. So assume that everything you say is being absorbed, because it probably is. Talk directly to the person, not to others about them. Engage with them and pay attention to nonverbal cues to better understand how they might be responding. Treat them the same way you would like to be treated, with respect and dignity. And you know who else is listening? Families. So show them that you care by using preferred language. This list from the National Down Syndrome Society can help. Down syndrome is preferred over Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a condition or a syndrome, not a disease. Use people-first language. Say a child who has Down syndrome. Don't say a Down syndrome child. An intellectual disability is the preferred term to describe a cognitive delay. The third thing to remember is that families may be dealing with more than meets the eye. Did you know that people who have Down syndrome are at an increased risk for certain medical issues? Between 40 to 60% have a congenital heart defect, and low muscle tone can sometimes cause difficulties in certain areas like movement and GI issues. They're also more at risk to develop childhood leukemia, sleep apnea, thyroid problems, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of stuff that parents may be dealing with even when we don't realize it. And there's something else that's challenging that parents shared. Many people believe a misconception that people who have Down syndrome are happy all the time. This myth is simply not true. People who have Down syndrome have good moods and bad moods, just like everyone. So remember not to make assumptions and to be kind always. Now, when we asked parents what they wanted people to know, this next answer was the most common by far. Treat their children like their peers. This means include their kids and do not underestimate them. Have high expectations. Expect that support and accommodations may be required, but inclusion matters because children who have Down syndrome love being part of the class just like their peers. Expect God to use the gifts and talents He gave them in the same way He uses the gifts and talents He gave their peers. Expect that sometimes your curriculum will need to be adapted, but when a lesson connects, spiritual growth will happen in the most exciting ways. Expect that some days a child may spread cheer wherever they go, and other days they may need to have behavioral boundaries set, just like everyone else in the class. Expect that the more time you spend with a child who has Down syndrome, the less you'll see them as a child who has Down syndrome, and the more you will just see them for themselves. expect great things. Whew, thanks, parents. I feel like I learned a lot, but there's one more thing before you go. One more thing that parents want you to know is that raising a child who has Down syndrome is filled with joy. It is filled with challenges too. If we want our church families to feel like, well, family, then we need to create a safe place for parents to be able to talk about both. So get to know your families. Ask questions and really listen to the answers. Don't make assumptions and don't pass judgments. Understand that the most important part of a family who has a child with Down syndrome is that they are part of your family too. Well, I hope you learned as much as I did, and I hope you'll join us again next time as we take a look at how we can set children who have Down syndrome up for success in the church classroom.